Story 1. The patient in room 413. I used to work as a night nurse at a small regional hospital in the Midwest. Nights were usually slow, quiet, the kind of silence where even the hum of the fluorescent lights felt deafening. But there was one room every nurse tried to avoid: room 413. It wasn't just superstition. Strange things happened there. Patients would complain of whispers waking them up at night. Some swore they saw a figure standing in the corner, even when no one was there. The most unsettling part? Many of those patients died shortly after reporting it. That night, I was covering the East Wing alone. Around 2:15 a.m., the motion sensor outside 413 beeped. I checked the chart. The room had been empty for days, ever since Mr. Halpern passed away there under unusual circumstances. Still, I grabbed my flashlight and walked down the hall. My shoes squeaked against the waxed floor, each step echoing. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. When I reached the door, I noticed something strange. The light inside was flickering, casting long shadows on the walls. I hesitated, then pushed the door open. The blinds rattled slightly, even though the windows were closed. The bed was empty, neatly made. I stepped inside, telling myself it was just the AC kicking on. "Hello?" My voice cracked in the stillness. No answer. I walked over to check the monitor. It was unplugged, completely off. Then I heard it, a faint breathing sound, slow and ragged, coming from behind the curtain. My heart started pounding. I forced myself to grab the curtain and yank it back. Nothing, just empty space. I let out a shaky laugh, thinking I was scaring myself. I turned to leave, but just as I reached the door, the call light on the wall clicked on by itself. The intercom crackled with static. A voice, faint and broken, whispered, "Nurse, don't leave me alone again." I froze. The hair on my arm stood straight up. I didn't answer. I just backed out of the room slowly, never taking my eyes off that bed. The next day, I told the head nurse. She looked at me, pale, and said, "That's exactly what the last patient in that room said before he died." 2 weeks later, a new nurse was assigned to 413. She lasted one night. She left her badge on the desk, said she wouldn't come back. When I asked why, she whispered, "Someone in that room begged me not to leave." But the room was empty. Story 2. The elevator that shouldn't move. Years ago, I worked as a night security guard in an old city hospital. The building was half empty because they were moving patients to a new facility. That meant most of the upper floors were abandoned. No lights, no staff, no patients. My shift ran from midnight to 6 on most nights. I sat in the control room watching the cameras. The feed showed empty hallways, flickering lights, and dusty equipment rooms. But one night, just past 3 a.m., I noticed something odd. The elevator was moving. It went from the first floor to the 4th, paused, then back down to the 2nd, then up again. No one was supposed to be using it. I called my partner on the radio. No response. Thinking it was just a glitch, I kept watching. But the pattern didn't stop. The elevator would open on an empty floor, stay there for 10 seconds, then move again. I decided to check it out. I took the stairs, avoiding the elevator. When I reached the 4th floor, the halls were pitch black. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness. Then I heard it, the elevator bell. Ding. The doors opened slowly, creaking. Inside, nothing. Just an empty metal box. As I stepped closer, the lights above me flickered. The doors shut by themselves, and the elevator began to descend, slowly, stopping at each floor, like someone was pressing the buttons one by one. I sprinted back down to the security office, heart pounding. On the monitor, I watched the elevator camera. That's when my stomach dropped. There was someone in there. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still in the back corner, facing away from the camera. I froze, staring. The elevator reached the 1st floor and the doors opened, but no one came out. When the doors shut, the figure was still there, facing the corner. The next morning, the elevator was locked for repairs. The building manager said the security footage from that night was corrupted. I quit a week later. To this day, I still dream about that figure. Sometimes in my dreams, it turns around. Story 3. The shadow in pediatrics. I worked pediatrics for years, and kids say creepy things all the time. But nothing prepared me for that night. The ward was quiet, most children asleep, monitors softly beeping. Around 3 AVO, one of the monitors screamed to life in room 5, heart rate alarm, oxygen alarm. I ran in, adrenaline surging. The child was fine, sleeping peacefully. The alarms stopped the moment I stepped inside. I checked the wires, the leads, everything. Perfectly normal. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A shape, darker than the room itself, stretching across the wall. It was a shadow. But there was nothing to cast it. It stood tall, impossibly thin, its arms elongated unnaturally. My breath caught. I couldn't move. The shadow leaned over the child's bed, like it was watching, protecting, or hunting. Then the lights flickered and the shadow disappeared. I backed into the hallway shaking. Before I could collect myself, the child stirred and opened their eyes. In the softest voice they said, "The tall man says he's coming for me." I didn't sleep the rest of my shift. The next day, the child's condition deteriorated suddenly. They were transferred to ICU. Thankfully, they survived. But right before they left, they grabbed my hand and whispered, "He says he's coming for you next." Story 4. The Morgue Door. I worked as an orderly in a hospital with a basement morgue. Most staff avoided going down there at night, but part of my job was delivering paperwork to that floor. The morgue hallway was always freezing. Long, dimly lit, the air stale and heavy. You could hear every step echo. One night, around 2 May, I noticed the morgue door was slightly open. That wasn't normal. It was supposed to stay locked. I pushed it open just an inch. The room inside was pitch black. The only light came from the hallway. Then I heard it. A soft scrape, like bare feet on tile. I whispered, "Hello, anyone in there?" No answer, just another slow, dragging sound, closer this time. I felt the urge to run, but curiosity held me there. My hand trembled as I reached for the light switch. Before I could touch it, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. I stumbled back, heart racing. I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't open. Then, from the other side, I heard breathing, slow, heavy, and then a whisper right against the door, "Don't let me out again." The next morning, the supervisor claimed no one had been in there. The lock? Perfectly fine. But later that day, I saw a note taped to the morgue door. The handwriting was shaky, almost desperate. It read, "You opened it. Now it's your turn to stay." Story 5. The woman in the stairwell. When I first started working night shifts at the hospital, the stairwell was my escape. It was quiet, a place to breathe when the wards got overwhelming. But after what happened, I never set foot there again. It was around 3:30 a.m., the deadest hour of the night. I was delivering lab samples to the basement when I decided to take the stairs instead of the elevator. I pushed open the heavy door, and the stairwell swallowed me in silence. The air was colder than usual. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, like the walls were amplifying every sound. Halfway down, I froze. There was someone standing 2 flights below me. A woman. Her back was to me. She was wearing what looked like an old hospital gown, torn and stained. Her hair hung over her face, and she wasn't moving. I thought maybe she was a confused patient. "Ma'am, are you okay?" My voice echoed, but she didn't respond. I took a cautious step down. She tilted her head slightly, but still didn't turn around. My gut screamed to leave, but my job forced me to keep going. As I descended, she began to move slowly, walking down to the next landing. Her bare feet made no sound. I followed, calling out again. No answer. By the time I reached the next landing, she was gone. The stairwell was empty. My heart pounded as I ran the rest of the way down. When I burst into the basement hallway, a janitor looked at me strangely. I asked if he'd seen a woman come out. He shook his head and said, "You mean the woman in the gown? Don't follow her. She's been dead for years." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He told me about a patient who threw herself down those stairs decades ago. Staff say she appears on quiet nights, always walking down, but never reaching the bottom. That night, I checked the security footage. The cameras showed me entering the stairwell, but I was the only one there. The next night, I heard whispers behind the stairwell door. I didn't open it. I never did again. Story 6: The Empty ICU Bed. I was covering the ICU during a night shift, a floor where death was a frequent visitor. We got used to machines beeping, the smell of antiseptic, and the silence that followed when a monitor flatlined. That night, room 12 was empty. The patient who had been there, a man in his 70s, had passed away earlier that evening. The bed was stripped, the machines turned off, waiting for the next admission. Around 2:45, a monitor in room 12 started beeping. A steady rhythm, like there was someone hooked up to it. I froze. No one should be in there. I walked down the hall slowly. The door to room 12 was slightly open. The monitor beeped louder as I got closer, steady and strong, like a healthy heartbeat. When I stepped inside, the room was dimly lit by the monitor's glow. The bed was made empty. But the monitor, it showed a perfect heart rate. I checked the wires, nothing was connected. It shouldn't have been running at all. Then I noticed the indent. The mattress dipped, like someone was lying there. The door behind me clicked shut on its own. My breath caught. The monitor suddenly spiked, the beeping frantic, almost like panic. A voice, low and rasping, came from the empty bed. "You left me here to die." The monitor flatlined. I ran, slamming the door behind me. Later, I asked maintenance about the monitor. They said it had been unplugged hours before. No power, no data, completely dead. But the next night, the same room's call light flashed. The intercom crackled with static. A voice whispered through, almost pleading, "Don't leave me alone again." Working in a hospital at night is unlike any other job. The halls are quiet, but not peaceful. The silence feels alive, as if the walls themselves are listening. Every creak, every flicker of light, every unexpected sound sends a shiver down your spine. Most people believe hospitals are places of healing. But when the sun goes down, they become something else entirely. Whether it's a whisper in an empty room, a figure caught on a camera where no one should be, or a voice calling from beyond the grave. These stories prove one thing: not everyone who dies in a hospital leaves it. Some stay behind, wandering the halls, trapped between life and death, waiting for someone to notice them. So the next time you walk down a dim hospital hallway at 3 a.m. and you feel like you're not alone, don't ignore that feeling. Because maybe you aren't.